good afternoon, and good evening, whenever and wherever you are joining this panel today. My name is Lana Hoffman. I'm the SME in payments, and today I'm going to be hosting a panel on mobile commerce. Today I'm joined with 4 panelists. Asmat, who is the CEO of a company called Fortu, an asset manager professional, and he's a constant contributor to Forbes in Russia. Mike, CEO of Pay by Face, a serial entrepreneur. When I say serial, I mean seriously serial. He founded over 25 companies worldwide, and he's also a published author. Anne-Marie from a company called Endeavor. She's from payments family, so payments SME, and she's a driver of payments innovation in the industry. And Neil Gold, he's a finance business partner in a Heathrow Airport, and he's the one who takes care of our beautiful experiences going through the gates and going to our next trips, hopefully very, very soon. So thank you guys for joining. Without further ado, let me introduce the subject, actually, and it's an interesting time. I would say that money has often been thought as dirty. And in fact, the association of money and diseases, or transmissions diseases, was long been established. And some villagers in the ancient times actually believed that money was somehow responsible for the plague in England. Now, fast forward into the recent future. In 2012, MasterCard actually shared a study how in which there is across the 15 countries, and the results showed that actually we are putting money at the top 4 dirtiest items we get in touch every day. That amongst the dirtiest, I'm talking about sharing a kind of a sharing money was in the same line of sharing a toothbrush or a toilet seat. So that's how actually we thought of money being dirty. Now, I guess COVID seemed to be putting the last nail in the coffin of that cash that is going to kind of a slightly disappearing from our everyday use. So I was just wondering now, considering that COVID has provided that kind of a sort of an impetuous inertia that consumers now move away from cash and moving into alternatives. In this case, we are talking about the mobile. In which direction do you think that the journey will continue from here? Are we going to be leaving now in even post terminals? Are we moving to social payments? Are we moving into these social platforms using Google of the world and Facebook of the world and transferring money using emails? So, Mike, do you want to start us with this one? Where are we going now?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to take this one. So, it depends on perspective, because I'm here in Bucharest, Romania right now, and Bucharest is Romania as a whole is very heavy on cash. It doesn't really matter if it gets you sick or not. People just have certain behaviors, and they feel they can trust it. You know, if you got the cash under the mattress, under the bed, you got the cash. You know, some people don't even have bank accounts because they're scared to go take the cash over to the bank and give it to someone else because they feel like they don't have it anymore. And so I think it's that tangible asset, which is sort of, the hoarding mentality. We're hoarding cash and I have it. So I think we still have quite a ways to go before, we become a completely cashless society like, some other countries. So I think cash is here to stay. It's going to be here to stay for a while. From a consumer perspective, I think it needs to come the movement of this sort of digitization of currency. Clearly, cryptocurrency and Bitcoin has started it. That's triggering some interest. But overall, I think it needs to come from the system, like the institutional systems and the merchant systems. If your merchant opens up a restaurant and they no longer accept cash because they don't want to deal with it, that's going to expedite the consumer to switch. But coming from the consumer alone, that's very difficult proposition.
Thank you. Anne-Marie, from the payments world, do you think that something are going to drastically change? Are we going to move to Sweden, maybe?
just to pick up on Mike's response there, I think with respect to being cashless, I think I've been thinking about it. I think it's where you are in the world, actually, because in the developed world where we've got the technology and everything to make us cashless, yes, we would love everything to be as cashless as possible. But then in the underdeveloped world, in remote places, like Mike said, the remote mountains of Romania and Poland have experiences as well, where you can't get internet connection, so you can't really go cashless, and people don't have bank accounts, and it's difficult to get bank accounts because they don't have the means of passing the KYC and the AML requirements that are necessary to get bank accounts. So we'd still have, I think, cash existing for a long time still. But just to continue from responding to your question, then the COVID-19 pandemic, what we've seen is that there is obviously with e-commerce, the explosion of e-commerce and a movement towards frictionless, sort of contactless payments. We don't want to touch the money. We don't want to touch the terminal. So everything needs to be contactless. And we've seen that driving the way payments are going now. So, digital wallets, QR code payments, and app-based payments as well. I think that's the way we'll be going in the developed world. The EMV QR code specifications recently have now made interoperability of QR code payments possible. So there's a lot with respect to what we can do for innovation in QR code as well.
So technically we are heading up into the future. Now looking at that future and looking at some changes that might come slower as per Mike, and some changes in the developed world that are now triggered, and it doesn't look like there is a way back now. There is no need, I guess, to go back. Now, from the investments and VC perspective, Asma, so do you think that that's where the investments are going to go? Are we going to further push some really kind of a seed capital and more investments into the fintechs and other innovative solutions to just persevere this kind of a wheel that we just rolled with COVID?
I think so. I think that the pandemic itself, the positive impact of a pandemic is the accelerated digitalization of everything. I can give an example that, for example, we have a local pub nearby here in Canary Wharf, and there used to be a traditional waiter taking orders in a notepad, and then you pay in cash or you pay by card or contactless. So now, because of COVID, they digitalized the whole experience completely. So you come, you have to scan the QR code on your table, and you put an order within the phone. So, and you pay via Apple Pay within the phone. So you don't, and you just sit and wait for your order to come to you. So it's completely different user experience, but they made it because of COVID. So you minimize the interaction with the people. But it's a good example that traditional industries have to adapt and digitalize. And I think in terms of the adoption curve of the fintech, we are just in the beginning of the wave, even though we think that we are very advanced and digitalized now. But 10 years forward, we will think that it was like, now we look into Windows 95 operating system, right?
Excellent. And that's actually a good segue into all that frictionless experience. Now, from the merchant's perspective, one of the things that I'm sure merchants are now looking at, I mean, none of the merchants kind of accounted in their budgeting that they will have almost a 90% of the transactions going through the POS terminal. So the amount of time that these POS terminals are now important for their business to be up, to be connected, etc., it becomes absolutely vital for these merchants and these businesses. Now, the question is, though, are we really, as an industry, do you think that asking a merchant, and Neil, so do you really think that as an industry we truly supported merchants? Do we provide them all the necessary and support and guidance and information, how their matrix changes, how they calculate their costs now, because the costs of the electronic transaction is different to the costs of accepting cash and all the security that goes around either?
Yeah, and I think I'll echo what the other guys on the panel have said as well about cash versus non-cash and the impact on industry. I think the key thing at Heathrow is that we're trying to create a balance because we have different types of passenger mixes. So you get passengers who are traveling to, say, Ghana, Nigeria, who will need cash. So your Travelex, our foreign exchange provider, will provide cash, but then also providing non-cash options as well. So we've, as an airport, to provide that service, we still have to maintain both parts. But I think from a merchant perspective, what Azamat said about around digital and moving towards digital space is what we're trying to do as an airport. What we're finding is that mobile usage at the airport is increasing quite a lot. So what we're trying to do is almost encourage our key retailers, so your Gucci's, Louis Vuittons, to almost say, well, can you sell that Louis Vuitton bag to that passenger before they've even got to the airport? And how can we as Heathrow encourage them to do that through, payment providers and ensuring that they can accept things like Union Pay, Alipay, etc. So that's the kind of the area we're trying to go to as an airport. And other things like, for example, in Terminal 3, we have a Lacoste, for example, but we don't have it in Terminal 5. So can you get that product from one terminal to the other so the passenger gets everything that they would get in any terminal? And also retailers such as Nike who are not at Heathrow, how can we get their products to our airport through our consolidation systems and through the right payment network? So that's the kind of the focus for us now, to kind of move towards digital. And my experience working at Hong Kong Airport, for example, was almost using mobiles completely on your whole journey. So you'd literally get your mobile, you could scan, you get your photo and you scan it at a shop, and you'll see the best offers, the best ways of payment for that particular offer. So it kind of shows that what future, I guess, looks like for airports. And obviously with COVID and less contact and stuff, that's going to be even more paramount now.
And how do you think this kind of an omni-channel, multi-channel sort of a experience to keep that kind of a frictionless movements, as you just mentioned? So I see something in the window shop, I scan it, it's already there. I'm on my way towards the airport. I'm reaching the airport. I'm either given there a box with already packaged stuff for me. I move into the plane. I get into that augmented now reality in which instead of watching a movie, I'm going to go into the virtual shop. I'm doing some shopping even before I landed into Hong Kong, where somebody's then waiting for me with another red bow and a lot of money I spent by that time. So is that something that you are kind of not just working with the retailers, but are you looking to work with the air companies as well? Is there
Yeah, so that, we're looking at kind of making the full journey better. So for example, passengers, if they're in airside and they want to buy alcohol, for example, and they know they're going to come back, how can we get that alcohol to them on their way home, or even deliver it to their house so they don't have to carry it in their luggage throughout their holiday? So looking at different types of things like that, things like, introducing technology where you could basically stand in front of a mirror in the toilet, for example, at the airport and, see what that Gucci dress would look like on you, or what that suit would look like on you. So things like that. So I guess taking it to the next level to improve that experience, but also keeping the kind of the look and feel and the interaction between people, because that, passenger interaction and staff and passengers at Heathrow, that's really important, that we still have that personal touch. It's not just about the technology for us. And that's why I said keeping the balance is really important here.
So that's excellent. You mentioned, so looking at it, Anne-Marie, from our payments world, kind of a payments lens. So now how important do you think it is to get actually all these different payment channels in sync, working with the networks, etc.? So where do you think that the potential work more need to be done in order to enable that smooth one-click payment that we have, for example, today with Amazon is a one-click pay?
Yeah, no, I think it's that's major, and one of the ways actually we can do that is having more sort of native mobile apps. Native mobile apps that I think they're key to enable a good omni-channel experience, and a good step forward as well to eliminating in-store terminals. I think to actually increase adoption of native mobile apps, it must have features such as a seamless checkout experience via, as you said, one-click payment, card on file, payment through native e-wallets, such as Apple Pay, Google Pay, and different APM methods, offering buy now, pay later and the various versions of it. Also actually having augmented reality so that you can search by image rather than sort of searching by a product. And having loyalty, that's really, really important actually for consumers now, having loyalty in the app, having discounts, etc., being able to, you know, pay with your points and collect points and pay, you know, wherever you go with these points, not just at the particular shop, but with partners as well. And using QR code payment, because I think we're going in that direction now with the standardization of QR code. I think we're going in the direction of, you know, like China and Africa, etc. We're going in the direction where QR code is going to become more mainstream. And having that in the app as well is critical. So I think it's really the way we are going. What I think is also important to help that innovation and the automation would be ISO 20022, the new financial messaging standard. Obviously, that's going to be big with you know, standardizing messages across platforms and across geographies. It allows flexibility, it allows rich, really meaningful data and innovation. And SWIFT is actually, you know, the authority on ISO 20022 at the moment, and they're going to be migrating. They should have been migrating November this year, but because of the pandemic, they're now migrating next year, November. So with the Bank of England, they're migrating their real-time gross settlement system to ISO 20022 next year as well. The US Federal Reserve, Euro 1, Target 2. So all of the global market infrastructures are migrating. So I think if the banks and financial services and businesses don't do something to go in that direction or migrate, they'll be left behind. But it's not going to be a big bang migration. It's not going to happen overnight. It is a big, complex project program. And so SWIFT is actually going to have their MT transaction messaging format as well as the ISO 22 messaging format alongside each other, running alongside each other until 2025. So there's a phased migration approach until 2025. But not everybody would be able to migrate. So what would happen, and what Endeavour can help with as well, is building mapping and interoperability tools to help them map those transactions, those messages rather, to help them map those financial messaging rather than migrating big bang. Because it's not cost effective for everyone to migrate fully. It makes sense for smaller businesses to have interoperability tools and mapping tools to be able to translate the messages.
As always, I mean, in the payments industry, every time we migrate into something that created, again, a new industry, a large 10-year migration into chip and PIN, created, again, a brand new industry, new players came in. But one of the interesting things is, what I'm hearing is that actually standardizing and moving further into the standard and equalizing the messages, standardizing them allows the systems to talk, which in terms gives a bit of a more frictionless experience for the consumer all around, regardless the channel it's used or device it's used. In this case, we're kind of looking at the mobile. But then again, that's a bright side of it, but there's always that dark side of it, and a dark side in every frictionless experience. While our experiences are frictioned, is because we're trying to keep it as safe as possible. Confirm, is it really you? Use the PIN. Third letter or third character of your 12th long memorable word. Try to remember that one. So that all creates a friction. So from the security perspective, Mike, and as an engineer, so what do we do? I mean, fraudsters are always at least 2 steps ahead.
Yeah, so I you know, it's all, again, just like Neil said, it's all based on the customer experience, because if you can hook the customer, you know, they're willing to accept certain limits of the system. Because if you're giving them an amazing experience, they're okay if it's slow. They're okay if it's not uber secure, because they're not moving millions of dollars. So they're willing to accept, from a consumer perspective, if the experience, convenience. There's three factors. There's speed, convenience, and security. And it's a trade-off between those two. Nothing's going to be across the top 100%. So if you deliver, a kick-ass experience, and it's super convenient, I'm building a pay-by-face system. Like, you pay with just your face now. You don't need anything. You don't even need your phone, your wallet, cash, nothing. You leave your home, leave home with your face. And everybody, first of all, is like, well, what if someone steals my photo and tries to use my photo? I mean, clearly, yeah, we thought of that. So, we have technology-based liveliness detection, AI, object recognition. There's lots of technology out there now that you can actually do multi-factor authentication on biometric payment systems, with face, with geofencing, with pin on glass, with, MPOS, and so many devices now that we've incorporated in our system to elevate all three of those channels. So I can, walk around an airport without anything. I could leave my bags. Clearly, you're not supposed to do that, right? But I'm just saying, like, you could just walk around the airport. You could walk from airport to airport. You might have left your wallet in Heathrow, and you're going to Dubai. What are you going to do when you get to Dubai? I left my card in Heathrow, right? And now in Dubai, I'm stuck without my wallet because I drank too many beers and I left it in Dubai or whatever. And if you carried your face with you, you're not going to leave your face home. So you can just pay with your face, and then that becomes such an amazing experience. And clearly we can add loyalty, just like Anne-Marie said, we add all these features on top, not just the core payment system. We add loyalty. I can do tableside ordering, like Azimath mentioned restaurants. I can do tableside ordering, and you just get up and go. You take a selfie, you get up and go, you've already paid. So now, because I have the core system and it's secure, convenient, and it's super fast, now I can build sort of a super app. And that's where I see things going, is super apps. Like Amazon is getting into Medicare, and all these other companies that never did banking are getting into fintech and banking. And I think the whole thing is sort of leveling the playing field now. It's not just I'm an expert at this and that's all I do. You're not going to survive, especially now that all the walls have been brought down in society and infrastructure and healthcare and everything. Things have to be, you got to give people options. And so as long as you have a stable system at the core, you can go in any direction. I can do delivery, I can do loyalty, I can do tableside ordering, I can do pay by face, I can do all kinds of things now once the core system is in place. So these are all really important to customer adoption, because at the end of the day, does the consumer want to use it or not? Because we could build all kinds of cool things, but if nobody wants to adopt it because they just love the cash, it's going to have to come down forcefully, and nobody wants to do that. So we really have to put the customer first, build customer first centric products. And if we make them really cool and really, really sort of trendy so that people put it on TikTok, and talk about it, and then, our kids talk about it, and use that sort of generative design, it will slowly be saturated into the marketplace. And then, it's a little bit of luck. So, I've built startups all over the world. There's no quick way to success. You just have to do the work.
Yeah, as they say, the harder I work, the luckier I get. So, but now you're talking about that trust. People trust in cash, or they trust in pay by face. Now, and you said, you mentioned different kind of limitations. Am I moving large amount of money? Do I then trust it because I move a coffee value through my mobile application or mobile payments? But Asmed, what about the actually people who are really moving large amount of money? Because investments is payment, and that is not £2. That's 200, 2 million. How that works and how they how much these kind of a stakeholder group or consumer group who are consuming also applications to do the investments, how much they trust.
Sure. Actually, the KYC, ML, and all the authentications are the main challenges for the investor to transact freely. For example, when it comes to investing in alternative investments, because they are not exchange traded, and you need to register with different platforms to in the separate KYC ML, then you get the bank details where to send money, then you receive million questions from your bank, then you supply all the documents, supporting documents, explaining that these are your money as a source of wealth. So it's a really lengthy process. It's like every investment becomes a mortgage application. So so that's why a lot of investors, they just give up at some point. They normally do not have time and that much passion for that much paperwork and bureaucracy. And our goal is to simplify this process, providing that it's secure. But in a lot of instances, investors, even though if they want to invest, they just do not fully kind of they're not ready to go through this bureaucracy and to remember all the login details for these platforms, but they like the asset class and they want it for diversification. So our goal is with Fortune, what we're trying to do is we're trying to create a single entry point, which is a simple, easy, and user-friendly, intuitive, where you do your KYC ML once, and you can log in simply without much of a scrutiny. Like you don't need to download additional app to log in or something like that. So, but it's still secure and safe because we use two-factor authentication. So we use the Face ID again of the smartphones that you have, and this allows you to basically access these investments at the tip of the point. I think it's really important because from one point of view, this scrutiny is and this bureaucracy is coming from the security point of view because people want to have it secure. But from the other point of view, it's because of the legacy infrastructure. Because this is the legacy infrastructure. Every platform, once they launch, they want to set up their own login and password. And you probably, each of you have 200 or 300 logins and passwords for various.
I don't even count. I stopped counting.
Yeah, and it's crazy. It's like you want to order food, you need to log in password. You forgot your login, you need to retrieve your password. And it's repeating like a loop, like all the time, and it's crazy. It's like, yeah, that's the idea. At least for your investments, that's what we're trying to do, and to have this unified. Because we're building the digital private bank, and we think that as any private bank, you should provide access to various investment opportunities. Now they're becoming digital. There's growing number of alternative investment platforms, and we want to basically simplify this experience for our users. That's the idea.
And do you think that, I mean, what would be the kind of type of the investors that would use such a platform? Because I'm assuming there's going to be probably a number of those that require lots of analysis, lots of advisors around them before they make a move and move certain millions in a certain directions. Whereas on the other hand, you will have day traders and day investors, and they're just going to be moving it on a daily basis.
Yeah, we're not targeting day traders. We are targeting just millennial high net worth individuals who want to be more involved in constructing their portfolio. So they're more DIY investors, I would say, because they know what advisors do. They just put together a bunch of ETFs, and the majority of the high net worth individuals, they come to these solutions mainly because they already tried other things. So they tried working with private bank, they tried all various platforms, because when you're sitting on some amount of cash, you need to put that money to work because inflation is eating it up, and it's a question of not losing that money. That when they face this problem, what millennials do, they usually go and Google and search for information, because that's the natural behavior that we all adopted. For example, how many of you read the instruction when you buy something new on Amazon? So no one is reading instructions anymore, like the paper instruction, the actual piece of paper. Everyone is going on YouTube and looking how to use this if it's not intuitive, but supposedly it has to be intuitive. Where's the on button, right?
Where's the power button? Yeah. So interesting concept with regards to that sort of a small purchases where big investments, and they both would like to they both still want to have a frictionless experience, which from the engineering perspective, I guess, Mike, we need to make sure that it stays as secure as possible, wherever possible. Interestingly enough, the risk of the financial industry in the past year seemed to be not at par with the amount of transactions coming out. Turns out that the research suggests that there is a huge increase on a card not present transaction declines, because the risk profiles of the financial institutions sitting behind those cards and those merchants seem to be not ready to accept 90 to almost 100% in some merchant cases. Transactions go through online rather than kind of a share between a brick and mortar and online, where the risk is balanced out. So much about the fraud. I believe that one of the research suggests for the last 5 years, the fraud tripled in the world, and it's now in the double digits, billions. But we are now moving into this kind of the world of contactless, the world of mobile payments. We've mentioned some non-developed world or in emerging markets where certain technologies might not be in the same level, but then again, they are still, we still need to get everybody on board. So I'd be interested to hear from all of you, actually, the view of how do we make sure that everybody gets included, because we don't want to leave people behind. We don't want to say, if you have a mobile phone, you're on. If you don't, well, who cares? That's it, done deal for you. So how do we make sure that we actually, as an industry, stay inclusive? How do we make sure that we enable people to still be a part of the society, regardless whether they have an access to a particular type of a phone or a particular financial services? What Anne-Marie, what do you think payments industry could do there? What do we do there, and what we should do better or more? You're on mute. Apologies.
Right.
Yeah.
That's better.
That's
okay.
better.
Yes. Thank you. I think just to give you some data, you were saying about the data earlier, and in 2011, e-commerce fraud was just below $10 billion. Today, it's over $32 billion and growing. And yes, so I think that the things that we need to do, obviously, are, PSD2 regulations. We need to comply with regulations. Regulation compliance are really critical here. So complying with PSD2 regulations, with two-factor authentication, which I think we've mentioned before, and also, balancing that with GDPR regulations, because, we don't want to give out more data than we need to. And also with biometrics, pay by face, like Mike is doing here, and fingerprint, whether it's fingerprint or iris or biological, whatever part of the body you want to use for authentication, it still needs to be progressive, and it needs to be frictionless. So I think that's really important. But for me, from a payments perspective, tokenization is also very critical. Tokenization, 3D Secure 2.0 is really important, that messages or transactions are tokenized throughout the cycle of the transaction. So I think we would. I mean, at Endava, we see a lot of. We support a lot of clients building tokenization platforms and make sure that you have that protection and security. This is really critical out there, especially with e-commerce, with online, going into the cloud, and COVID-19 with all the spams and the fraud we've been having.
Do you think, Mike, same question, but just from a different angle, do you think that we can support the vulnerables and the vulnerable group of people? I'm thinking the one which are sort of on a poverty side, so don't have access to kind of a digital mobile phones in this particular case, or to actually even, I understand from your solution, I need to have first the phone in order to scan my face somewhere to put it in some database. Or how do we support other vulnerable parts of our society with a certain disabilities? So is there any way we can actually still include them? It's not just on a transactional level, but rather also to be able to use buy now, pay later, use embedded finance in different shapes or forms. So how do we make them to kind of live the normal life?
Yeah, that's a very difficult question. I mean, I wouldn't have the knowledge in one person to answer that thoroughly, clearly. So it's going to require a group, a group effort to come up with a solution for that. And I think there's some key points that are going to have to be touched upon. And one is education, education of this process of walking people through the change. And that's again like customer experience. If you can make it intuitive, like Apple took away buttons from our phones and everybody loved it. So if you can create that customer experience to adopt that change easier, so it's just intuitive and it's natural for people, even with a very low understanding of what it takes to change. That's really important. But then again, you need the infrastructure. So, what Elon Musk is doing and launching satellites to build a global internet from space, that's going to be facilitating that. I hate to say this, but, improvements on internet infrastructure, 5G or whatever, we have to be careful of the side effects and whatever, do the research. But infrastructure needs to facilitate that. You can't send your kids to school if there's no school. So you need to build the schools first. And so we need to build the platforms, the infrastructure, level the playing field from a consumer perspective, and if nobody can have a phone, if the nodes from an engineering perspective, you can't have the end user self-service themselves, you need to have self-service centers. So that's why banks created branches, because, you couldn't just keep the money under your mattress. You brought all the money to a branch back in the days, and they secured it. So we need to have sort of centralized locations where these operations can happen. You don't need a smartphone or an iPhone to create a pay-by-face account. You could have an iPad or an Android, and that's the beauty of pay-by-face. It's not tied to one platform or one hardware platform. I can install pay-by-face on Android, on iPhone, on Windows, on drones, on robots, on anything. So I made this system platform agnostic and ultra scalable. So it doesn't matter the platform. And so if we had centralized locations where people that don't have the means could come, like City Hall or McDonald's or churches and McDonald's, right? And so you create these centers, your city halls, your community centers, and that's where people can come and learn and get onboarded onto the system in a friendly environment, right? So that they're not getting bad data from social media and freaking out about it. And then creating the ecosystem. You got to create the ecosystem. And so this is not just one person is going to, Elon Musk is taking us to Mars. It's not going to be like that. It needs to be a group effort from like Anna Marie is the regulatory is really important. The compliance, the governance, the accountability structure. The architects of the system. That's the problem in any business is the business doesn't talk to engineering and the architects in the middle are lost. And so, you got to have the architects of the system in place, and they have to be able to see both sides of the structure. And that's a very rare breed on this planet. So
that's an excellent view. I really love your view, and that's a perfect thing. We need to come as a unity, and this is where I guess the regulators could actually help out by proposing or setting up minimum standards that needs to apply. So now go back to Neil, and if you look at now from your perspective of, and we talked a little bit, touched upon our initial conversation earlier last week when we looked at, okay, so how much the Heathrow space will change. And interestingly enough, earlier you just mentioned, well, I have people coming from going to Nigeria, they need cash. I need, people are going to Hong Kong, they just need a pay by face option. And then all of a sudden, different your floor on Heathrow might change because our shopping habits might change because we'll be buying before we get to Heathrow to start with. So your space then could become some of the town halls that Mike is referring to. So if you're going to Nigeria, you do not have a smartphone. How about you register pay by face and then you pay whenever on Heathrow? You don't need a smartphone. So do you think that this would be something that you would ask from a regulator to support a little bit, to kind of channel the financial industry and fintechs per se, to start building things to a certain standard to support your merchants and eventually your customers?
Yeah, I do. And I agree with Mike. I think the first main factor is education and educating our passengers and giving them the option to do everything: cash, card, pay by face, pay by finger, pay by whatever, right? I think that's for us, it's that whole educating our different passenger mix profile. What we're finding is that post-COVID, what we're going to probably get is a lot more leisure passengers versus business passengers, because Heathrow passengers generally are more business. So we need to basically educate people probably over 50 who are retired, who are going to use our airport now, to kind of business people who will go with the whole pay by face stuff. So I think that's quite important. But what also we're thinking about is almost, how can we have single basket options for products? So could you, when you booked your airline ticket, for example, can you book your Heathrow Express ticket from Paddington to London? Could you then book your food, so your food from Wagamama's, so it's ready as soon as you get there, that's done, and then you can pay for your bag as well, for example, from Gucci. So it's almost that one single payment, and getting regulators to help us to try and do that. And for us, it's almost we as an airport, we provide the space to the retailers, but then we have to, I guess, encourage the retailers to actually take on these different types of payment methodologies as a next level, and you get some retailers who are quite keen to do that, and quite they'll come on board, and you get some that are quite powerful, who will just do things the way they want to do it, and because they're so important to us as an airport, we will not say to them, no, you can't do that. So there's that challenge that we're always facing as an airport. And I think from a space perspective, you'll see it in the news, companies like John Lewis, for example, who have left airports and stuff like that. So it's almost like our company strategy is changing to aviation and airport retail. There's government announcements around VAT and duty free that also impacts what retailers want to do in aviation, and we're trying to lobby that quite a lot. So I think all of that makes a difference, and we're now thinking, if there is space available, does that just become digital screens where passengers can buy products from a whole wide range of places? So a bit like what Amazon are doing, or Argos, and almost bundling that into one kind of payment that a passenger has to do. So there's a variety of things, and I think one of the good things that we're good at doing at Heathrow is getting insights and understanding what our passengers want. So we ask a lot of questions, we do a lot of surveys on a monthly basis, because ultimately they're the ones who determine how good we are as an airport, and in terms of our ASQ scores and stuff. So we tend to have to respond to them, but also provide everything, because 80% of them may not want to use cash, but that 20% probably will. So we have to provide that option. We can't just say no cash,
Yeah, that's interesting. And now we are sort of almost 5 years into a United Nations General Assembly. This is already a 6th year, and we're looking at those 17 Sustainable Development Goals that United Nations set up for the humanity at the end of the day, for the whole planet. And I would be really interested to hear some of your views on short views on how do you think as an industry we can contribute to one of those 17 sustainable development goals set up, whether it's related to helping businesses to develop because they have access to particular financial products, and they have an access because they have a particular infrastructure that we can use. Maybe think about mobile money, for example, and the way that the telecoms actually supported the emerging markets using telecom minutes as the way of payments rather than having smartphones, so that you can still do the payments using Nokia 6310 with the buttons. So I'm just kind of, what do you think as an industry where we could contribute to that kind of a sustainability subject that was set out, and we can kind of provide our positive impact to it? You want to maybe, Samant, you want to start us off?
To be honest, I don't have much of a comment on this because it's very generic, sort of, and a bit far from what we do. But overall, I can say that there is a general trend towards more responsible investing in the investment world, for example, and it's a widely accepted must thing to do now, because probably if you look back 5 years, all of the ESG investing type of things were more of a marketing gimmick. Now it's becoming a must thing for a lot of institutional investors. They actually divest from non-ESG compliant companies. They announce it as a formal policy, and it's a good trend because investing doesn't have to be only about making money. It has to be about
making a difference.
Making difference, yes, and that's what millennials actually also like, and that's what they believe in. That only you can make money only if your money is making good for the earth, or for the planet, or for the people around you. So it's a very more of a philosophical view, but I think it goes in line with what you just said about the global view on where we're moving overall.
Short, Mike, from you shortly, what your view would be?
Sure. Yeah, I think the key word is sustainability, and that's important in any system. And from an engineering perspective, building systems where every 6 months you got to tear it down and build it up again, it is never going to last. So that's the idea: is to build to architect a system that is resilient, and not just for the next 30 years for the people that built it and to make their life happy. It's for generations to come. So, the pyramid, how did Egypt build that pyramid to last thousands of years? That was a system. And so that's the idea, is to build a system that will last the time, the ends of time, which is not easy to do. But that, sustainability is the key, because if you're not throwing waste, if it's not all waste, then it can be resilient and self-generate and regenerate itself. And that's the idea. Zero waste, sustainability, things that help the planet and doesn't, you don't destroy the place you live in. Those are going to be the key concepts on coming up with a solution for this.
Excellent. And Anne-Marie, you have a view?
Yeah, no, I think as we look towards financial inclusion and the SDG goals, I think I thought the M-Pesa mobile wallet in Kenya is a really good example of how they're doing this to, satisfy the SDG goals of reducing poverty, reducing hunger, and increasing technology and innovation, because the main selling point of the M-Pesa mobile wallet is that it reduces the fees, and it's inclusive. Instead of using banks, what they use is actually the Vodafone's Safaricom mobile phone network. and funds are transferred via SMS text messaging rather than through sort of banks. And so therefore you don't have the scheme fees or the bank's fees or all of those fees or PSPs and all of that. And this, I think we talked about having super apps, and this is a super app because meaning it includes, you don't have to have a bank account because people just don't have the means to have bank accounts. But what they have is the M-Pesa wallet, and they can get loans, they can transfer money, they can pay their bills, they can save, they can buy government bonds. There's so many different things. But I think that's a really good way. A good example for us to look at is how to actually help achieve some of those sustainability goals.
I can't agree with you more. And interestingly, you mentioned M-Pesa. Yes, they use the infrastructure given actually to allow and to support the local sort of environments to not just transact, but build businesses, as you mentioned, and build and take loans. And one of the interesting shifts it's also noticed in the industry at the moment is that the charity is changing. And I don't know if you've noticed, but there are a few now organizations that, again, looking at Azamat from the investments perspective, now the charities, the way that the business model of the charities is that it's not a charitable giving anymore, but it's rather a lending. Where the people are taking that instead of a charity, they're taking a loan, building a business so that they can return that loan. So for the investor, yes, maybe not a large sort of a profit at the end, but still it is still an investment. It's still higher than the banks, I guess, can give as an interest rate on your money sitting on the account. And it still helps you to feel good about yourself that you're actually making a change and making a difference with your investment. And for the end, we are 6 minutes off. I would actually like to first ask organizers if we have any questions in Q&A for our panelists at this stage.
So, Lana, I'd like to make a point, if I may.
Of course, yes.
I just, to the point you just mentioned, I know that the World Bank, I was talking to the head of payments at the World Bank about a year and a half ago, and I know his vision was to actually make sure that everybody in the underdeveloped world had a bank account by the end of 2020. Of course, that was a vision, but it's not something that is easy to achieve. So, there's organizations globally like the World Bank who are doing the best they can to help us to reach that financial inclusion and not leave people behind.
Yeah, that's a fair point and a good statement. Thank you. It does look like that anybody's telling me from the organizers that we have any Q&A, but if we don't, then as a last question, actually, I would be very curious to hear from you in this last 5 minutes of our conversation today. Is fintechs was significantly disrupted payments. That's now given. So. That's it. Payments is definitely not what we knew 10 years ago. But interestingly is what's next? I'm really curious to hear from you. What do you think next, sort of within the financial services industry, though? What's next to be disrupted? So payments, it's done deal. What's next? What do you think? Mike?
Yeah, I'd like to jump on that. I think the AI, anything built around AI and machine learning, automation, robotic process automation, VR, AR, that sort of thing. Sort of digitizing the mundane tasks. I think that's gonna lead to efficiency improvements in the overall business structure, in the overall financial structure. And clearly, everybody's in business to do profit. So it's going to increase profitability at the end of the day if you make your system more efficient from an employee human resource perspective. So we've gone through this COVID situation, and we now clearly see that the human element is a risk because our systems are so fragile. This has completely disrupted our entire planet. In 1 year, everything has been turned upside down, and we can't go through this again. I mean, this is impossible to have this problem again. This is one of those problems where we have to learn from our mistakes. We have to. So there is no second chance here, and you know, we're going to have to use our intelligence as a human race to make our planet more efficient. From using this technology, you know, God forbid we get hit by a solar flare and everything goes back to the Stone Ages, and we lose everything we've designed from a technical perspective. But the idea is to leverage what we've built and really use it to our benefit. From an engineering. So like, for example, just to bring it down a notch and give you an example, you know, we're building a pay-by-face automated VR assistant that is fully integrated into AI, machine learning, neural networks, deep learning engine with face recognition, voice recognition. It's basically creating a clone in VR. So, you know, bank tellers, you know, receptionists, things that are just interactive with humans. We can completely digitize that digital clone experience so that those people can go do something more creative, which, you know, humans are better at that stuff. So we can put basically robotics, I think, is going to be the next generation.
Disruption. Yeah, the next big disruption. Yeah. Neil, for the end, what do you think your view would be?
Yeah, I think I agree with Mike on some of the bits, but I think for me, it's almost, you know, looking at recovery and COVID recovery in retail or in a lot of industries, it is all about getting back to basics, getting back to square one and recovering as businesses before you can start thinking about taking, I guess, the payment side of things to the next level, because stuff like that costs a lot of money. It costs millions of pounds, and that's money that businesses don't have at the moment. At the moment, it's all about OPEX efficiency and driving as much revenue as you can. In retail, there is not that much demand, obviously. So it's almost how do you get that to basics and then worry about some of these great ideas and the blue sky thinking.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you ever so much. We are 1 minute before end, and I would say that and it's a shame we lost Azamat in the process. That's technology. It works sometimes it doesn't. It happens. But what I could conclude is that there is a space for improvement, as always. That we are going to be coming out smarter. I'm sure we will after this year of COVID and serious disruption, that we will think about our solutions, our business models twice. Yes, we will. And that we will try to use technology and to make it more sort of to our advantage. We can't close our eyes and think like a cat. If I don't see you, you don't see me, nothing happens around. So it's going to be that we have to open our eyes wide and make sure that we do embrace the changes. If we don't, we're going to be definitely left behind. I'd like to thank you so much for your participation today. I really enjoyed the conversation, and I hope we're going to have a chance to continue this conversation sometime soon.
Have money in our wallets, it will be because we don't have battery in our mobile phones, and instead of looking for an ATM, we'd be looking for a plug. So like that, I thought I'd share it.
It's true.
That's a good one.
That will happen to me a lot of times.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.